Is the West more dependent on Africa than we thought? As African nations impose export bans on Western countries, it's becoming clear who needs whom. The West is feeling the pinch. What's the strategy now, and which countries have led this movement? Let's find out. For decades, Western economies have thrived on the assumption that Africa will continue supplying cheap raw materials to fuel their industries. Oil, gold, uranium, lithium, and other resources from Africa have powered everything from technology to transportation in Europe and North America. Now, however, Africa is reasserting control over its resources. 10 African countries have imposed strict regulations on the export of these raw materials, retaining value domestically and driving local economic growth. This shift is shaking global markets, forcing Western countries to reckon with a reality they hadn't anticipated. Africa will no longer function merely as a supplier for the world. This move is more than an economic policy. It is a significant assertion of Africa's sovereignty. By deciding how, when, and to whom they export their resources, these nations are challenging a system that has long kept them disadvantaged. Historically, African resources were extracted and exported cheaply, processed elsewhere, and then sold back to African countries at a premium. This cycle has prevented Africa from benefiting fully from its wealth, making it difficult for these nations to develop robust, self-sustaining economies. The new export restrictions signal a profound shift in how African leaders view their role in the global market. Number 1. Ghana's gold restriction. Ghana, one of Africa's largest gold producers, has taken a decisive step to control its gold resources. New regulations now require that mining companies operating in Ghana sell 20% of their refined gold to the Bank of Ghana. This policy is a strategic move to help Ghana build its gold reserves and reduce reliance on foreign currencies, which have often left the country vulnerable to external economic shocks. By holding more of its wealth within its borders, Ghana aims to gain greater financial stability and independence. For decades, Ghana's gold was exported primarily in its raw, unrefined form, with much of the value being captured by foreign refineries and companies. The new policy changes this dynamic, requiring foreign mining companies to refine a portion of their gold within Ghana itself. This decision is about more than economics. It is a challenge to a system that has long dictated that African resources be exported with little benefit to the originating country. But why should a country so rich in gold have to rely on foreign currencies to stabilize its economy? This question goes to the heart of Ghana's new policy. Western economies and industries have for years benefited from the gold they obtained from Ghana at discounted prices. By enforcing export restrictions, Ghana is signaling that its resources will no longer be available to subsidize foreign economies. Western industries, particularly those in the jewelry and electronics sectors, are feeling the effects. As the cost of gold rises, these industries face increased expenses and shrinking profit margins. Ghana's policy is a message to the world that the era of cheap, unrestricted African resources is over. Ghana is now reclaiming its resources and ensuring that its wealth supports its economic growth and stability, rather than being siphoned off to enrich foreign markets. Number 2. Uganda's agricultural shift. In a transformative move in 2021, Uganda implemented a ban on exporting raw agricultural products, including coffee and tea. Uganda, a top coffee producer, recognized the economic disadvantage of exporting raw beans, which foreign companies could then process and sell at a premium. By focusing on exporting only processed goods, Uganda is keeping more of the value of its coffee within its borders. This shift is helping to build a local processing industry that creates jobs, increases revenue, and strengthens Uganda's economy. Why should Uganda's farmers put in the labor to grow coffee, only to see the major profits go to foreign corporations? By addressing this imbalance, Uganda is setting a new standard for the agricultural export market. The government has been investing in local processing infrastructure, such as coffee roasting facilities, to add value to the crop before export. This change challenges the global coffee industry, which has long relied on low-cost raw materials from Africa. Western coffee companies, accustomed to buying cheap beans from Uganda, are now faced with either paying higher prices for processed coffee or finding alternative suppliers. This disruption impacts not only profit margins, but also the supply chains of companies that have come to rely on Uganda's affordable exports. By moving up the value chain, Uganda is claiming a stronger economic position, reducing its dependency on volatile international commodity markets and ensuring its coffee profits benefit Ugandan workers and businesses. The impact on Western companies highlights the broader shift in Uganda's economic approach. This policy challenges the long-standing assumption that African nations are there to provide raw goods to more developed economies. By asserting its right to process and profit from its resources, Uganda is showing that it can stand as an equal player in the global coffee market. This shift is transforming Uganda's role from supplier to market participant, positioning the country to benefit from its natural resources fully. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Number 3. Gabon's log ban. In 2010, Gabon implemented a ban on the export of raw logs, marking a turning point in its approach to natural resource management. Before the ban, Gabon's timber industry largely served foreign markets, with raw logs exported to Europe and Asia. Gabonese officials saw that this arrangement left most of the value generated from their timber in foreign hands. By exporting logs, Gabon was effectively allowing others to profit from its forests while missing out on the potential economic benefits of a domestic wood industry. If Gabon's timber is valuable enough to sustain European industries, shouldn't Gabon also benefit directly from that value? This question lies at the heart of Gabon's decision to restrict raw log exports. The ban encouraged local industries to grow, leading to a boom in furniture, manufacturing, carpentry, and other wood-based sectors. These industries have created jobs and diversified Gabon's economy, making it less dependent on a single export market. The impact on European furniture manufacturers has been significant. They now face higher costs as they can no longer rely on cheap raw logs from Gabon and must purchase finished wood products instead. This change has forced many companies to reconsider their supply chains and acknowledge the true value of African resources. Gabon's policy has become a model for other African nations, proving that local processing can bring substantial economic benefits. By investing in its timber sector, Gabon has rejected the idea that African countries must remain low-value suppliers. This shift is more than just economic. It's a powerful message that Gabon is prioritizing its growth over the convenience of foreign industries. Gabon's success demonstrates that African nations can control and profit from their resources, challenging the narrative that their role is only to supply raw materials. Number 4. Niger's uranium restriction. Following a recent political shift, Niger imposed restrictions on uranium exports, particularly targeting France. For decades, Niger's uranium has been critical to France's nuclear energy sector, sold at prices that primarily benefited French interests. The recent increase in uranium prices and the export restrictions have sent a clear message. Niger will no longer allow its resources to be undervalued and extracted for the benefit of foreign economies while it remains underdeveloped. If France truly has energy autonomy, why is it so affected by Niger's uranium restrictions? This situation exposes the dependence of European energy security on African resources, challenging long-standing narratives of Western self-sufficiency. France's nuclear industry, which powers much of the country's electricity grid, now faces increased costs and potential shortages. Niger's move is not just an economic policy, it is a declaration of sovereignty. By asserting control over its uranium, Niger is forcing European nations to renegotiate terms that have long been one-sided. Western energy markets, which have relied on cheap African resources, are now facing a rude awakening as Niger asserts itself as more than a mere supplier. The impact on France has underscored the importance of African resources in global markets, particularly for countries that have built their energy systems around access to affordable raw materials. Niger's stance signals that African nations are no longer willing to provide resources without fair compensation. This shift is reshaping the global energy landscape, where African resources are now recognized as essential not just for African economies, but for global stability. France's response to Niger's uranium restrictions reveals the vulnerability that underpins Western reliance on African resources, highlighting a dependency that has been too long ignored. Number 5. Guinea's food export ban. With global food prices on the rise, Guinea has taken a bold step to secure its domestic food supply by restricting exports of essential crops such as rice, maize, and yams. For years, these resources have been shipped overseas, often leaving local markets undersupplied and vulnerable to price hikes. Guinea's new policy reflects a commitment to putting its citizens' needs first, ensuring that food security remains intact during global crises. Why should Guinea's population struggle with food scarcity while its resources feed wealthier nations? The food export ban is not merely a reaction to rising prices, but a shift in how Guinea approaches its agricultural resources. By retaining a greater share of its staple crops, Guinea is prioritizing its stability over the demands of foreign markets. This policy protects Guinea's people from global price fluctuations and underscores a broader movement within Africa to put domestic needs first. For Western companies that rely on cheap agricultural imports from Africa, Guinea's ban is disruptive, creating higher costs and reduced availability. Food importers accustomed to sourcing inexpensive staples from Africa are now forced to either pay more or find alternative suppliers. This policy shows that Africa is unwilling to sacrifice its resources for global convenience, especially when it threatens the well-being of its citizens. Guinea's approach to food security is a powerful statement on self-reliance and resilience. It challenges the traditional model where African resources are expected to serve global markets without regard for local impact. By focusing on domestic stability, Guinea is asserting that its agricultural wealth is a national asset, not an unlimited resource for the world's consumption. This stance empowers Guinea and sets a precedent for other African nations seeking to reclaim control over their food systems. Number 6. Mozambique's timber bans. In 2017, Mozambique followed in Gabon's footsteps by banning raw timber exports, mandating that timber be processed domestically. Mozambique's decision reflects a desire to foster local industry, create jobs, and keep the profits from its natural resources within its borders. Western companies used to sourcing raw timber from Mozambique now face restricted access, as Mozambique's local industry grows to process and add value to its timber. If Western buyers are committed to Africa's economic growth, shouldn't they welcome this shift? Yet, many Western companies preferred the old model, where Mozambique exported logs at low prices, leaving the high-value production to foreign industries. By retaining its timber industry, Mozambique is rejecting the low-value role assigned to it in the global economy. This policy marks Mozambique's determination to rewrite its economic story, ensuring that its resources contribute directly to national growth. Western companies accustomed to cheap, unprocessed timber are now dealing with limited options and higher prices, a shift that prioritizes Mozambique's future over the convenience of foreign markets. Number 7. Namibia's lithium restrictions. As global demand for lithium surged with the rise of electric vehicles, Namibia seized the opportunity to control this valuable resource. The Namibian government imposed restrictions on lithium exports, aiming to establish local processing industries to participate in the green technology boom. Western tech companies and automakers, reliant on low-cost lithium, are now confronted with the choice to either invest locally or seek alternatives. If sustainability is truly a Western priority, shouldn't Namibia's move be applauded? Instead, Western industries are scrambling, unprepared for a scenario where African countries retain ownership of critical green economy resources. Namibia's decision positions it as a key player in the sustainable energy market, disrupting supply chains and forcing Western companies to negotiate on Namibia's terms. This policy shift is about more than economics. It's about setting a new standard in global resource management. By retaining control over lithium production, Namibia is positioning itself as a leader in the transition to renewable energy, ensuring that the benefits of the green economy are shared with Africa, not extracted from it. Number 8. Ivory Coast's cocoa control. The Ivory Coast, the world's largest cocoa producer, has imposed restrictions on exporting raw cocoa beans to boost its domestic chocolate industry. For years, Western chocolate companies profited from low-cost cocoa beans, buying them raw and processing them into high-value products abroad. Why should the Ivory Coast, which provides the world with cocoa, remain on the margins of the chocolate industry? By restricting raw exports, the Ivory Coast challenges the status quo, keeping more of the value within the country and creating jobs in local chocolate production. Western companies now face higher prices or limited access, as they can no longer rely on cheap cocoa from Africa. This shift not only strengthens Ivory Coast's economy, but also disrupts a global industry that has traditionally kept Africa at the bottom of the value chain. The Ivory Coast policy is a stand for economic dignity, asserting that Africa deserves a fair share of the wealth created by its resources. This move forces the chocolate industry to respect the role that the Ivory Coast plays in its success. Number 9. Democratic Republic of the Congo. The Democratic Republic of the Congo (DRC) holds some of the world's richest deposits of copper and cobalt, two minerals critical for modern technology, especially for renewable energy, electric vehicles, and electronics. For years, these resources have been exported in raw form, allowing Western corporations to reap the profits from refining and manufacturing, while the DRC saw only a fraction of the potential value. Now, the DRC has taken a stand, implementing export restrictions on unprocessed copper and cobalt, encouraging local processing and value retention. Why should the DRC continue to subsidize foreign tech industries at the expense of its growth? The DRC's leaders have realized that by processing its minerals domestically, they can create jobs, improve local economies, and capture more value from their resources. This decision represents a significant departure from the past, where Western companies, especially tech giants, have relied on cheap cobalt to fuel their innovation without investing in the communities from which these minerals are sourced. Western tech companies now face increased costs and more complex supply chains as they are forced to source processed minerals or pay a premium for raw exports. This shift not only affects the tech and electric vehicle sectors, but also signals a changing dynamic in the global supply chain for renewable resources. By asserting control over copper and cobalt exports, the DRC is no longer just a supplier. It is positioning itself as a crucial player in the green economy. The DRC's move highlights a broader message. Africa's resources are not a free-for-all, and the continent will no longer accept being a source of low-cost materials. Western corporations and economies, heavily reliant on African resources, must now grapple with the reality that African countries are setting terms that prioritize their development and prosperity. Number 10. Zimbabwe's chrome ban. Zimbabwe, one of the world's largest producers of chrome, recently imposed a ban on the export of raw chrome, aiming to boost local processing and increase its share of the high-value chrome market. Chrome is essential for a range of products, from stainless steel to specialty chemicals. For years, raw chrome has been exported cheaply, benefiting foreign industries and leaving Zimbabwe with minimal profit. With the new export restrictions, Zimbabwe is demanding that the benefits of its resources remain within its borders. Why should Zimbabwe continue to serve as a mere raw material provider when it has the potential to build a robust domestic industry? By banning raw chrome exports, Zimbabwe's leadership is making it clear that the country is ready to take control of its economic future. The government has invested in local smelting and processing facilities, creating jobs and ensuring that more value is added to chrome before it reaches international markets. This policy has had a ripple effect on global industries, especially those in Western countries that rely on low-cost chrome from Zimbabwe. Companies that previously purchased cheap, unprocessed chrome are now facing higher costs and limited availability, disrupting their supply chains. Zimbabwe's policy reflects a broader desire among African countries to reject the role of low-cost suppliers and embrace a future in which they retain control over their resources. By building its domestic chrome industry, Zimbabwe is taking a powerful stand against a system that has long taken advantage of African resources. This move challenges the assumption that Africa's wealth should be sold cheaply and positions Zimbabwe as a leader in the fight for resource sovereignty. Western companies reliant on African chrome are now forced to reconsider their approach, as they can no longer depend on cheap exports from Zimbabwe to support their industries. So, to sum this up, these 10 African nations are not merely disrupting global supply chains. They are redefining Africa's role in the global economy. By reclaiming control over their resources, they are challenging a long-standing narrative that has kept Africa on the periphery of global markets. Western economies, heavily dependent on African resources, are now being forced to reckon with a future where Africa sets its terms, ensuring its natural wealth serves its people first. The impact of these policies is being felt worldwide. Western companies face rising costs, supply shortages, and a need to adapt to a new reality where Africa is no longer a passive player in global trade. For Africa, these moves represent more than just economic adjustments. They are declarations of independence, challenging an exploitative system that has kept the continent economically marginalized for centuries. The message is clear. Africa's wealth will be used to fuel Africa's growth, not subsidize the economies of wealthier nations. As the global market adjusts to this new reality, Africa's actions signal the dawn of a new era where the continent is no longer merely a supplier, but a full participant in the global economy, shaping its destiny on its terms. Do you think the West would beg to get these exports? Why can't they keep ties that benefit both? Let us know in the comments section why West only wants to exploit. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.